of Newport at the next general election this November 2022. I would like to read the whereas and all of the three resolves that are in front of us tonight. Whereas the City Council of the City of Newport endorses and supports the introduction and enactment legislation authorizing the City of Newport and the Town of Middletown to establish a regional school district and providing for state aid for school housing costs of at least 80% of debt service for expenditures eligible for state aid. Therefore, be it resolved that the City of Newport hereby memorializes the General Assembly to enact legislation authorizing the City of Newport and the Town of Middletown to establish a regional school district and providing for state aid for school housing costs of at least 80% of debt service for expenditures eligible for state aid, provided that such legislation would become effective only if approved by a majority of the qualified voters of the City of Newport and a majority of the qualified voters of the Town of Middletown. And be it further resolved that the city solicitor, working with the city manager, ensure that the appropriate legislation is substantially the form attached hereto is submitted in a timely manner to the Rhode Island General Assembly to ensure that all requirements are met to ensure consideration of this question by the voters. And therefore, be it further resolved, the resolution shall take effect upon its passage. I move approval.
Second.
There's a motion and second discussion. I'd first like to ask the manager if he could enumerate the 8 items that are highlighted for the audience.
Sure, Madam Chair. Let me first break this down to its essence. And what we're talking about here is merging the governance of the 2 school committees into 1 regional school district, as well as merging the operation function of the school department into 1 school department. You have in front of you an act that you may authorize being submitted to the General Assembly for consideration, which would culminate in the question that Lynn Segley just read on the ballot in November. In the council letter that I provided to you, I enumerated 8 items that I thought were the guts of the act, the 25-page act. You may disagree, and I'm sure there'll be some questions as to maybe some of the other provisions in it. But let me highlight those 8 items that I iterated in my council letter. Section 1 is very simple in the act. It's the enabling authority to create the regional school district. We're all familiar with what enabling legislation is. Authorization to the local governmental body to move forward on some type of action. Section 2 reflects what Councilor Segley just read to you, and that provides for 80% reimbursement for any bonds issued between January 1st, 22 and June 30th, 26. The City of Newport has already issued our bonds in that time period. Assuming this act is submitted and assuming it's approved by the voters in November, it will entitle us to 80% reimbursement on the Rogers and Pell School issued bonds. Section 3 is very simple in its context. It provides for a transition period in the event the act passes. The local school committees would cease to exist after June 30th, 2024. That's June 30th, 2024. During that time, the local school committees will continue to operate as is, as they're operating today and as they were operating last week and as they'll operate, tomorrow. The regional school district is charged in this act with developing plans for the effective operation of the new district. Point 4 is a discussion we've had at length, not only internally, but I had it with the council the other evening, last week. It's the governance model. The regional school district will be comprised of 7 elected members, all elected at large by the regional school district voters with a guarantee of 3 members being from Newport and 3 members from Middletown, with the seventh member being within that context of one of the top vote getters. So it depends upon voter turnout from Newporters or from Middletowners as to who will have the majority view on the regional school district. The first election will be held in November of 2023 with an initial 3-year term, and thereafter the next election will be in November of 26, and so we'll continue with 2-year terms thereafter. Section 7 of the Act dictates the power of the regional district. One of the reasons that I wanted to just, and I've emphasized this to all of you before, but of note in these powers is the regional district. It's a separate and distinct entity that has the powers of condemnation and also the separate powers to issue bonds. That currently doesn't exist with local school committees. Section 11 involves the educational costs. The educational costs of the district shall be apportioned between the city and town based upon a per pupil calculation. Very simple. There will not be any effect if we were to follow this model. There will not be any effect on state or federal aid that's currently allocated. And indeed, within the context of both sides of the ledger, the state aid and the federal aid that's currently allocated to our local district would be an offset to the per pupil calculation. I wanted to mention one other thing, which isn't, I didn't, you know, it's funny, I didn't indicate this in the council letter because I think it's just evident, but the debt service that we've incurred for Rogers in Middletown and the debt service that Middletown will be incurring for the new facilities stays on our respective side of our ledgers. We don't cross-pollinate that debt. Section 14 is kind of the corollary to the regional school district. There will be a joint finance committee consisting of 7 members appointed by their respective cities and towns. Could be council people. The city manager has a designee on that committee. But the one offset here is whatever community has the majority of members on the regional school district, the governing educational body, the opposite will be true on the finance committee. So if the city of Newport had 4 members out of the 7 members on the regional school district that were elected, the finance committee as an appointing body would have 4 members from Middletown. The last point, which I think is somewhat nominal, simply gives us additional time to look at this issue. Generally, questions to the Secretary of State's office, when you follow a pattern in which you want to submit something to the General Assembly, a local issue, the questions would be due to the Secretary of State's office by August 10th. The way this act is worded, our question would be due by September 8th. And the reason for that is that I know many of you wish to continue to look at this issue throughout the summer to make sure that we're continuing to do our due diligence, to look at the issues of opportunity that may be presenting itself here, to look at the issue of operations, issues that are not answered here tonight in this act, with the undercurrent being, and some of you have expressed it very clearly, and that is what's good for the children. That issue, and as I indicated in the council letter, I see this as 2 prongs. First is moving this act towards the General Assembly, which is what your action would do tonight, so that we can at least line it up in time to get it on the ballot in November. The second part of it is looking at throughout the balance of May into the summer, up until the very last moment that we have to submit this to the Secretary of State, looking at the opportunities that can present itself through going through this exercise. To that end, we've been having extensive discussions with the Department of Education. The superintendent has been part of this team looking at this act. We've been promised to have assistance from the Annenberg Institute of Brown University to try to thresh out some of these questions, as well as some consultants that we were, as late as today, on the phone with, redesigning how they'll help us throughout the summer, trying to drill down on the issues that all of you have raised with my office and with others as to the educational opportunity aspect of this. I can't sit here and tell you that I have any answer on that remotely, but that's what the balance of the summer, we're not the summer yet, the spring, I guess, as well as the summer, we'll take and we'll drill down on this issue and try to get everyone the answers and make the community feel comfortable with what's going forward. But tonight's exercise is simply just to move it forward, this 25-page act forward to the General Assembly. So, because timing's everything, and we're at the 11th hour on this, in which we need to get it out, get it off our desk and up to Providence.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Councilor Leonard.
I just have one question, and thank you for going through this. And you said that the school districts can issue bonds.
Yes.
And the reason I'm asking is because in some states, school districts issue bonds themselves
Right.
and do not require council approval or ballots. And I want to know what that means here.
Well, I think you just described it. The regional school district, if you we'll look at state law. The powers that are enumerated in this act are no different than what's currently in state law with regard to regional school districts. And that is the ability for a regional school district to issue bonds, assuming that the regional voters approve the issuance, no different than the exercise we went by with, Rogers and Pell, and that Middletown purportedly is going to go through with their new facilities.
All right, so they could issue, the school districts could they could issue bonds if approved on the ballot. Is that correct?
Well, they would, it's the other way around. If they came up with that concept and they wanted to have a bond question, they could place the bond question on the ballot, in which the voters of the regional school district could say yay or nay.
All right, that's what I meant.
That's right.
Thanks.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Councilor Bogan.
I just wanted to ask whether or not we were going to discuss it as a council before we heard from the public, or vice versa, just before I said anything. I wasn't sure what the order we were going to do, because I know there's a lot of people who wanted to speak.
Council has any questions about what Mr. Nicholson presented, they certainly can ask now, but then the public can participate.
The reason I was asking is because I have a amendment that I would like to bring to the council on the resolution that would just that would require us to take a reaffirmation vote on this item again before it goes to the Secretary of State's office to be placed on the ballot. And what it would essentially do is bring it back before the council for a vote for a second time. So we'd be voting on it this evening to ask the General Assembly to place it on the ballot, and then we would vote again in either the August or September timeframe based on what the Secretary of State's office says is best, to have a reaffirmation vote and have that secondary vote once we have that additional time to get those answers to all the questions that we have, that we've all talked about. And so, because I know that as the city manager just spoke, there is the goal to spend the summer months, to spend really from now until then, trying to answer the questions of the educational benefit, the cost savings analysis, and all of those things that I think a lot of folks have questions on. And I would like to propose an amendment that would serve as a third resolved, that would read as, be it further resolved that this question will come before the council for a reaffirmation vote before the submission on the ballot to the Secretary of State's office. And I did, excuse me, I did speak with the city manager and the city solicitor on trying to make sure that that language was correct. But, you know, I have a lot of concerns, and I know a lot of other people do, about what it means for us to be voting on this now, and about the questions of what this means for our students and how we would see an actual improvement in the educational opportunities for our students. And for me, I would be much more comfortable voting for this resolution tonight if we took it upon ourselves to have that second reaffirmation vote in the August or September timeframe, once we have those additional questions or that additional information, because as it stands right now, I think that there's just a lot of questions that we don't have answered, and that gives us the time between now and the end of summer to get those answers and then come to vote again as a council.
Okay, in relation to that, I have a question for the manager. If in fact, when it comes time in August, September, whenever it is, and could a council member put in a resolution if they wanted to revisit this issue
They could.
and not send it for a ballot?
Well, what, on a crystal ball, what the answer is, any of you, as you know, on your council rules, can submit resolutions. And it can say whatever it says. And if that was a route that one of you wished to take, I would assume that it would read to the effect that because of various findings and investigations, it would not be prudent for this matter to go to the Secretary of State's office, because that's an integral part, a required part
Sure.
of getting it on the ballot, then so be it. You'd have to deal with it then.
Yeah, I just think it kind of, it feels negative toward the process. We really don't have all the answers right now. And I think it would serve us, it would serve the public better if in fact we were able to have these conversations. I would not be in favor of including it on this particular one, but at any time in July, you could bring it back
Madam
through a
Chair,
resolution and we'd have more information. Right now, it's just a concept. We're kind of under the gun to get it to the General Assembly so that before they finalize their session in June, to be submitted to
Yeah.
the Secretary of State.
Yeah, I don't want to call this a concept. This is what's in front of you is the legislation. The
Okay,
verbatim legislation that will be reflective of the question that would be on the ballot, which is it's typical ballot language. You've all seen it before. Matter of fact, I'm not going to bring up old business, but we had a discussion about this about 2 months ago. But the ballot question, the first 5 words on it are, it shall an act passed at the January 22 session at the General Assembly, and then it has the details be approved. The act that we will be asking the voters to approve that is modified by that question is verbatim of what you have in your package. It's not a concept. Again, we will be looking at, hopefully in a lot of detail, and giving you a report of some detail within a short period of time of operations, capital issues, as well as academic issues. In the discussion that I had with the consultants this morning, in which Colleen Germain was on, a representative from the school department of Middletown was on, Sean Brown was on from the town of Middletown. You know, we all recognize that more due diligence is required to look at the opportunities. I frame the question as what it would look like and what are the opportunities, recognizing that ultimately the regional school district, once it's in place, is the body charged with, you know, molding this new thing into something that presumably is positive. But so I guess getting back to how the council wishes to proceed, you may proceed how you wish. You're absolutely right, Madam Chair, about resolutions. But you have a motion.
I guess I had mischaracterized, I'm sorry, with the concept. The devil's in the detail, and I realize we have some work ahead of us.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Counselor.
I just wanted to respond because I think I'm of the opinion that it seems as if a lot of us agree that there are a lot of questions to be answered and recognize that fact. And I just think that I think it would be beneficial for the council, but also for the public, for us to have that second vote where we do have answers to those questions and have it be as part of this vote tonight, because I think that there is a lot of concern on behalf of the members of the public that we are taking this vote this evening without having the answers of the questions, with that predominant question really being, you know, how will this improve our children's education? And I think that this gives us, having this amendment and requiring us to have that reaffirmation vote in August, September, gives us an opportunity to react to the answers that we will get. So we have all of these questions, and there are a lot of folks on standby ready to start doing this work to get us these answers. And I just think it would be beneficial, and I think it would be a positive thing to give us the opportunity to react to the answers that we will get.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Counselor Segley and then Counselor Forte.
Thank you. I understand that there is more due diligence to be done, and I certainly understand that there are concerns about the educational value of this effort. But I sort of stand by the idea that it is not up to the council or to these 7 people to decide the issue of unification. And I don't think it ever will be from today until August or September. I think that we will, I don't believe I think a reaffirmation vote is something that is not necessary because I can't imagine us deciding that we 7 people could actually would actually decide to not set forth a proposal that could bring opportunities to our students and help the taxpayer. So I don't see the point in a second vote, to be honest with you. And I think that it is not up to us now or in the future to decide that. I think what we need to decide is sending this to the General Assembly as well as sending it to the voters.
Mr. Bean?
I just a point of order. I don't believe Councilor Bova's motion to amend has been seconded.
Second.
You're having a debate, okay.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Debate is
Second. There you go.
Debate is.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
There was a motion seconded by Angela McKellar. Counselor Forte?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Councilor Segley, but just to reiterate to the city manager, so even though we vote for this today and it moves forward, and we work together with the public, with our citizens to clarify all of the questions and get together all of the informations that we need to see if this is something valuable for us, for our city, and say, when it comes before us again, we can submit a resolution to challenge this, or
No,
What?
let me just preface saying that what the mayor was referring to is, and what I iterated was, any of you, under your council rules, can submit a resolution. And after we vet the other side of the coin here, because I think the business side of the coin is pretty clear. The governance side as to how things are operated is pretty clear. But you're concerned about the opportunity, educational opportunity side. So after that's vetted during the course of the coming months, if any of you is dissatisfied with the results of that vetting, then under your council rules, any of you could submit a resolution to be placed on our normal docket like you do every meeting, and resolve not to have this matter submitted to the question submitted to the Secretary of State's office. What generally happens with these types of issues, and you're going through it with your charter amendments too. If your charter amendments, if you were to endorse any of the proposed charter amendments, we would have to frame a question, shall charter, number 5 pass the language that does X, Y, Z. That question literally, even though it's already been framed, normally is framed by the city solicitor, I'll say with my assistance. And we literally then submit it to your own canvassing office that votes on to certify it. And it goes from the canvassing office up to the Secretary of State's office. So that process right now is outstanding. It's outstanding. So if you were to tell us in a resolution, and the majority of the council was to say, after consideration of that resolution, we don't want this thing to go to the canvassing office, and ergo, we don't want it to go to the Secretary of State's office, we won't send it up. We won't send it down to the canvassing office. We won't send it up to the Secretary of State's office. So the ball is in your court to do what you will anyways after hopefully vetting this matter in a good detailed, reasonable way in the coming months. If you don't like the answers, you don't like the answers. You are the policymakers, you are the decision makers.
thank you.
Madam
Yeah,
Chair.
thank you. Yes, Councilor McCallum.
I'm going to say I actually support Councilor Bova's amendments. And the reason for this is because while I understand that resolutions can often, we can reserve to present a resolution at any point in time. Realistically, that doesn't always happen. Sometimes we get information and we need to be making things that might not actually, like I'm more concerned that a resolution, if we tried to introduce a resolution and the timing was off, we'd miss that opportunity. The second thing that I think about is certainly there's a reason why we have 2 forms of government, right? For the school committee as well as the city council. And from the city council perspective, I'm looking at our schools as a potential economic driver, right? And the reality of the situation is, to Councilor Bova's original point, which is, what is the incentive? And what is it exactly that we are pushing, and how is this going to attract more families to come here? More, how does this make our children more competitive in this sense? And the reality of the situation is putting a pause button in place is good planning for just in case we need it, right? And even with this resolution set forth tonight, I don't think that Councilor Bova's amendment is going to compromise whether or not we're going to take the vote. It's just an extra step. And I think as us as council, we always want to be doing our due diligence. There's, especially with this regionalization that's happening, there could be lots of pivots and things that we may or may not like. I'm not sure. But I think it's actually very smart of Counselor Bova to be putting in an already made, just a pre-made stop button, just in case.
Madam Chair,
Thank you. Yes, Counselor Holder.
my only concern with putting something in August or September is depending on how we vote at that time, that still leaves us 2 to 3 months of getting more information on either way it goes. So I wouldn't want to pull the plug too early or settle too early and then get more information after that before the actual November ballot.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Counselor.
I don't think that you'd be pulling the plug on anything. What's being proposed is to have the option to take another vote again in August. It doesn't mean, Counselor Bova's amendment doesn't mean it's a no. It's just a just in
No,
case.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, I just
Yeah,
want
my,
to
my point is
Counselor Holder.
if we take a vote for going forward, putting it on the ballot, and then in those 2 to 3 months, we get more information to find out, hey, this is not a great idea,
I don't,
then we're,
but
or like I said, or vice versa. I don't want us to say, no, we're not going to go for it and put it on the ballot, and then come to find out, we should have, because now we're missing out on X, Y, and Z. That's good for the students of Newport. Should be up to the voters' hands to decide if that's what we do.
Well, and I think that my concern too is while there's city representation towards our administration, we as a council have yet to sit down with Middletown too. And I don't know about you, but I remember being in their council chambers and it wasn't pretty. And I'm not sure that, yeah, I would feel better, again, to just take that extra amendment to make an extra decision for just in case.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Counselor Segley.
I think having a second vote actually confuses the public
Yeah, I
because
do too.
they're saying, oh, well, we're going to put it on, they voted to send it to the General Assembly, but we might not be able to vote on this legislation. I mean, I just think it sends a negative message to the public before we even get information about opportunities that could be presented to our students, which, by the way, our students are very deserving of more opportunities. I think that sometimes, we paint things in a negative way immediately rather than looking at something that are great opportunities. So I think it's confusing to the public. I think that if we need to vote on this to send it to the General Assembly, and if the General Assembly gives us the ability to put it on the ballot, that's exactly what we should do. In the meantime, if, let's say, something catastrophic happens where we're all of a sudden saying, oh my gosh, this is the worst idea ever for whatever reason, we can always take steps. So I don't really want to confuse the issue on this.
Madam Chair.
Counselor Leonard,
Madam Chair.
please. Yes.
I agree with Counselor Segley. I think there's a mixed message and confusion for the public because generally speaking, this will give us a good opportunity now to vote on this and then do more and more due diligence. And ultimately in November, if it's on the ballot, the public will decide. I mean, I think that we need to vet what are the advantages of doing this, what in turn could be opportunities for students. And at the same time, we're talking about what I'm heard is maybe an opportunity to save $45 million in bonds, in bond obligations. So I think everything has to be considered as a whole and not in fragmented sections. I think the bottom line is, and you all know me, what do we get for the money? If there's a savings of 45 million can that be used for better opportunities for students? Better programs? How would you use it? And we all know what the COVID has done and what the school ratings have shown. How do we help the kids to catch up? Could this be an opportunity in savings to help students move forward so that they can be more successful in life?
Okay,
Madam Chair.
yes.
Thank you. I do just want to say, I don't think that having a reaffirmation vote would be confusing for the public. I think we ought to give people some credit that they would be able to understand what's happening. And I view it as being responsible stewards for the public and building in those stopgaps to do our due diligence as we go through the process of fleshing this out. I'll say every single counselor tonight that has spoken of questions that they have on what regionalization could look like, I also have those questions. I agree with all of the questions that the other counselors have brought up. I think that we all have those questions. I think the public all has those questions. And I think that that's why adding that stopgap and having that additional opportunity for us to pause and take stock is such a beneficial thing. And I also want to say, I agree that our students deserve more. And that's why I went in front of Middletown 3 years ago with such passion to speak about the opportunity. It's why I have served on the school building committee. It's why I want to build in this stopgap, because I want to support this. I want regionalization to be a good thing for our students. I have yet to see that with this proposal that it would be. And I feel that I cannot support this proposal until I understand what the benefits would actually be for our students. And I think to say, that it would be an educational benefit and it would be a cost savings, that sounds great. Show me. I want to see that. I want to see where that is and how we figure that out and what that looks like before I say I support regionalization.
I moved all the questions. You want to restate your amendment, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. So this would be,
Second, by the way, to
Oh, second. Motion second.
this would be a third resolved, and it would read, and be it further resolved, this question will come before the council for a reaffirmation vote before submission on the ballot to the Secretary of State's office.
Okay. All in favor of Counselor Bova's amendment, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? Motion fails.
Did you want to hear from the public about that?
Yes, if anyone from the public would like to come up and to either have questions or comments, please do so now. Thank you. You have 3 minutes because I don't know how many people are going to get out. Your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Shannon Pine, 13 Sheffield Ave, Newport, Rhode Island.
Could you speak right into the microphone because it's very hard to hear sometimes? Thank you.
Is that better?
Yes.
So as a community member and also as a parent of a student at Thompson Middle School, the only confusion that I have this evening is the overuse of the word opportunity, because there has yet to be any discussion as to what opportunity this unification would provide to the students. Which is very concerning because as a parent, that is very important. Sorry, I'm getting a little nervous. The only thing I'm hearing is that my child and the students in Newport are dollars. They're providing a financial opportunity. And that's really upsetting. There's been no talk about community. There's been no talk about Newport in general and what we bring to each other and these kids who have grown up together. There's been nothing that's been discussed. So I totally stand by the two who are saying, this is rushed. This feels rushed. There's been no discussions except there's been years of talks of unification, and it's never gotten to this point because no one's ever wanted it. Middletown has never wanted it. Newport's never been in support of it. And now all of a sudden we're pushing forth not an idea because of a financial gain. It just feels wrong, and it doesn't feel like it will provide any opportunity for our students. There haven't even been discussions. This is all based around economic gain. It does not feel right.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address? Please come up now. Thank you. 3 minutes.
Good evening, Stephanie Winslow, 5 Roland Road, Newport. To say that I'm shocked and confused by this resolution is to put it mildly. Local media certainly seem to think it's advancing quickly towards a done deal, or so they've been told by some council members and press releases. The cart is miles ahead of the horse here. We're being asked to approve a regional school district with no educational plans or policy that show what might work for our communities. All we've seen so far is a basic legal framework. Mr. Nicholson, thank you for your contributions, but it's only part of what we need. This is not a plan that promises to enhance educational opportunity for Newport. Nothing I've seen to date has given me any indication that Middletown is thinking of anyone's welfare except that of their own taxpayers. In 2019, when we approached our neighbors to consider talking about a regional high school, we were rebuffed with accusations of seeking a bailout and fear-mongering over how Newport students would ruin Middletown schools. Now, ironically, at the 11th hour, we're being asked to provide that very bailout so that Middletown can finance construction that everyone has told them all along they needed. It is Newport students and families who will lose out in this deal. Yes, there's potential for additional reimbursement on our finished construction projects, but we did not design or build to 80% specification. In fact, we've made serious concessions to our original plans because of COVID escalation costs. How do we ensure that the new Rogers building is as well equipped as whatever Middletown might build at 80% reimbursement? Do we have to bring another bond in front of voters? Finances aside, there is something much more sinister in this deal: school segregation. I'm blown away that RIDE is endorsing 2 separate high schools. Recent press releases by Newport and Middletown promoted separate school buildings as a way to preserve respective traditions and classroom opportunities and identities. Should we build a set of railroad tracks on our border while we're at it to ensure no one ever crosses over to the wrong side? With separate high schools, this plan pits communities against one another to fight for resources. Middletown's school population is more affluent than Newport's, with many more white parents who are used to being heard and are comfortable advocating for their children. We will immediately put Newport's BIPOC families at a disadvantage in this system. Second, each school will attempt to recruit students, which is exactly what we do now. Students can already choose a CTE program in either high school and attend that school. There's no new benefit to CTE enrollment in what's being presented. Third, there's no attempt to change the way we engage and support our Black and Hispanic students. I'm a huge proponent of regionalization under one high school, but I'm hardly ready to see a regional school happen without serious buy-in from teachers and parents in both communities regarding the hard work that needs to happen to bring equity to Newport students. People are kidding themselves if they think we can just take the same status quo systems of teaching, discipline, curriculum, and hiring, throw it all into a regional school district, and magically erase the, quote, achievement gap. Rushing this decision purely for short-term dollars and cents, rather than for long-term systemic change, is nothing short of foolish.
Thank you.
I have 3 sentences left. May I finish?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Education is not cheap. As long as America continues to expect its public schools to fix all of the problems we've created in our society, we will always be pouring money into our school systems. I'm dismayed that we continue to seek ways to cut school budgets rather than invest in our future.
That was
If you truly want to save a little money,
That's more than 3
provide
sentences.
opportunity,
There are other people
we
that
must do
will
this
be
with one
speaking.
regional high school and a genuine plan for equity.
Thank you. Yes,
Madam Chair, could I just make one comment?
sure.
I just want to clarify what we're actually doing tonight. We are not approving regionalization tonight. We are approving legislation to go to the General Assembly so that the voters can decide. It's not a done deal until the voters decide. So let's just clarify that this is not a done deal. And we will be hearing about opportunities, and we will be hearing about things that might not be opportunities. But this is a voter decision, and would be rightfully in the hands of the voters, not in our hands. It's not up to us. It's up to us to give it to the voters.
Okay, yes, please. Your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Penelope Hunt, 15 Dartmouth Street. So I came here tonight because although I do understand that this is a two-step process and this would just be moving it to the state, I guess that I do feel more strongly that the council has been put between a rock and a hard place in terms of making this decision in the short term, and thought that the reason for the two-step process would be that the council would be able to vet it more thoroughly. So I was disappointed. I didn't know about Councilor Bova's amendment, but I was disappointed, to not see that pass, just because that would have allayed my concerns as a member of the public. Not feeling, as other parents, I have a son who will start in kindergarten at Pell in the fall, have said that the driving factor here has been Middletown pushing, coming to the table in response to their needs. And so the piece that I guess I hope to add to the conversation tonight was, if the driving factor, till this point has been about reducing our property tax burden, just to ask the council to consider that, especially with the recent proposal for a split property tax rate, there are other ways and other changes that will be made to alleviate the burden to resident property owners. And for me as a parent, the fact that we're going to save this money, which it sounds like a lot of money up front, $45 million has been referenced, but over 25 years of payments, over 10,000 properties in Newport, doesn't actually shake out to a lot of money on a per property basis annually, I would argue. So that's not my primary concern. And of course, I do look forward to hearing more about not just the educational benefits, but the annual operating savings specifically for Newport, as well as confirming it for Middletown, just because it feels that, we would be moving this forward quickly to be connected to Middletown for a very long time. And just one more point on the role of the council advancing this versus the public vetting. I don't have a statistic to cite, but I would wager a bet that more ballot questions pass than don't. So that would be the purpose of asking the council to really be able to vet this, because once it's on the ballot, obviously if it doesn't get to the ballot, it will never pass. And so it's very hard for the public to be informed, and I'd appreciate more consideration by the council. And I know, like I said, everybody was put between a rock and a hard place, but thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to address the council?
We have someone on. Oh,
Yes, sir. Your name and address for the record, please.
Tim Harrington, Lakeview Avenue, Newport. More than 2 years ago, I told this council that they should have gone to the Middletown Council and had them throw you out, and they rejected the entree that you did, and everybody ignored me. I think you need to move forward on this thing. It's a little like doing deals in business. I've done a couple of $1 billion worth of deals, and probably 15 or 20 of them in my career. And you always have concerns. It's like Elon Musk. You think he's got all that money lined up? He doesn't have that lined up. You got to pull the trigger. You can always kill this thing later on by saying, listen, we're not happy at all with this deal. Let's go forward and stop fooling around. If they'd done this earlier, we would have probably had one combined high school, which probably could have gone in where the Pell Bridge is, or out on the proposed Middletown Town Center property, which is more than big enough to build a combined school, but that's past it. Stop fooling around and move forward. Nothing is guaranteed in life.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to address the council?
Do we have people online who would like to speak? We have 3
Oh,
people.
okay.
Yes, City Manager Joe Nicholson. Amy Machado,
Okay.
his name has raised her hand.
And address, please?
Can you hear me?
Okay.
I'm carrying an echo, so I'll just start talking.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Amy, 3
Okay.
minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you. This is Amy Machado. I live at 12 Burdick Ave. I'm also the president of Building Newport's Future. Thank you all tonight for, coming together to present this to us. I've been pretty clear in my emails to the committee that I believe that this is a bad deal for the city of Newport and for the children of Newport. I find it interesting tonight that I've heard 2 city councilors say that we are at the 11th hour or we are under the gun. No, Newport is not under the gun. Newport is not at the 11th hour. This is a Middletown problem. Middletown is at the 11th hour. Middletown is under the gun. I was very concerned when I heard Mr. Nicholson say that once this is approved and then we eventually have a combined council, we might be able to mold this into something positive once it's in place. I mean, that's just ridiculous to think that we would take such a step for the children of Newport with knowing nothing, admittedly, from Mr. Nicholson, not until this is actually approved. Your job is to represent the people of Newport and the children of Newport. And I would like to remind the council that, you say send it to the voters. How many times did we have to come before you to get you to put step 2 of the RIDE process for the new high school on the ballot? How many workshops did we have to have? The rushing, the behind the scene deals that's going on here, the executive sessions, it's very concerning. And I would remind you that this is a representative government. I know that has come up in the past when we talk about, how the city council works. It is your job to stop this in its tracks and say, this is currently a bad deal for the children of Newport. Please do your jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else online? There is 2 more? Thank you.
Kendra Winter,
Yes, Kendra, your address, please?
Can you hear me? It keeps asking me to unmute myself.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, 3
Okay, great.
minutes.
Thank you. Kendra Munter, 22 Homer Street. Amy kind of touched on what I was going to have, so I will condense it to save everyone. But my question is why are we rushing? I mean, we're breaking ground on Rogers in a couple of weeks. Pell is almost complete. We don't need to follow Middletown's timeline. I don't know why we can't pause, take a year, study this, work with the Brown people from Brown University, and really do our due diligence. And it doesn't have to be on this year's ballot. It can be on next year's ballot. It needs to be on this year's ballot for Middletown, not for Newport. We're moving ahead. I'm looking back, we've had workshops on food trucks. I can't even count how many we've had on food trucks, on outdoor dining. Today, I got a notification that there's going to be one on park safety and enjoyment. But on this, you're asking us to trust that over the summer, which let's admit it, nothing happens over the summer. People go on vacation. It's hard to get things done. That over the summer, due diligence will happen so we can hit the kill switch if needed and not get this slipped in. And all of a sudden, it's November. We have no answers. We're going to be asked to vote. I cannot tell you how many people I've spoken to who think that this is going to build one high school. People do not even understand the language of what unification is right now. They think we are back at the table to build one high school because this is so rushed and Middletown is so desperate to get the funding that they are spewing out all kinds of stuff to get everyone on board to get this approved because this is the only way they can build their schools. It is not my problem as a taxpayer of Newport. It is not my problem as a parent of a child in Newport schools. And I am tired of the Newport students, once again, everything being put on their backs and they have to carry the load. Can we please hit pause? Can we please take our time? It can go on the 2023 ballot. We can have a special election. But I don't see why Newport has to bail Middletown out when they have spent decades of shooting us down, and now they want us to hurry up, get this done so they can build their new schools. I'm done. I've had it. I'm sick of this. I want us to focus on our schools, get our new school built, have a great, amazing school district that I know we can have, fund our schools, and move on and stop having our children carry the burden of our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Another speaker?
Ada Neary.
Yes. Ada, your address, please?
This is Ida Neary, 6 Newport Avenue.
Ada, I think you have to speak up, please.
Okay, great. Ida Neary, 36 Newport Avenue. As always, I want to thank you first for taking your time to listen to us. Obviously, I was on school committee 3 years ago, so you know that I feel and I think that for 2 towns that have fewer than 70,000 residents, we should have a regionalized high school. I've said it. I've been in front of Middletown City Council, Town Council to say this, the same thing. I have sent you a long email. I'm not going to repeat it. Here are my concerns. I understand that you have to, that this is not a vote for regionalization. I understand that this is not a vote for regionalization. I understand that this is not, we're not making the decision right now. But I also understand, as you yourselves have said, that you don't have all of the information. And how do we put something to the General Assembly, something that is not a concept, something that will be set in stone? How do we put that in front of the General Assembly? How do we put that in the front of Newport voters when we have not had time to vet this? I find that you have all talked about due diligence. That's great. This is exactly what we want. However, because we don't have time, because Middletown is rushing the issue, I have to agree with Amy and Kendra. We are not under the gun. We are not under the gun. Middletown is under the gun because they have a construction that's $285 million and they would like to get 80% reimbursement, which is completely and absolutely understandable. However, they need that 80% on the back of Newport's children. We do not owe this to Middletown. We do not owe it to Middletown to do it now. We could do it next year. And so sending this to the General Assembly, which will be an act, not a concept, an act, without doing due diligence, to me, feels like really you're not ready. Do not send this. This is what I urge you to do. Do not send this to the General Assembly because it is not a concept. It's not a concept. It is an act. It will be something that comes in front of the Newport voters, which then you will say, oh, we didn't have a chance to vet it. Please vet it, put it next year. We in Newport are not under the gun. Middletown is under the gun. And we were repeatedly told, show us the money, show us the money, show us the money when we in Newport wanted to pass our bond. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes. We ready to vote?
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I just wanted to make a statement before we vote, if I may.
sure.
Thank you. I just want to say, I want to support regionalization. I want to see our students in Middletown and Newport growing together and learning together, but I don't see that as what we have in front of us tonight. What we have tonight is based solely on an increased reimbursement and nothing else. And the idea that administrative regionalization would bring additional educational opportunities to our students and fiscal benefits to our taxpayers is not something that we can say with confidence yet. We don't yet have the answers to the most important question of all of this, which is how will this benefit our students? Yes, this will be the public's decision on whether or not we move forward on regionalization, but to vote in the affirmative on the resolution tonight is endorsing the concept, and it is endorsing the act and the regionalization put forward in this act. And I cannot say that I endorse this right now. And I want to be clear that this does not mean that I won't take part in the process to flesh this out. and that doesn't mean that I won't take part in the conversations with the public and with the council and with Middletown. I fully intend to be an active participant in the process of determining what that looks like for Newport. But I just want to be clear that on the reasons why I can't support this tonight. Thank you.
Madam
Okay.
Chair,
Are we ready to vote?
can I just say,
Council McCown?
oh, okay, thank you. Again, I agree and echo with Counselor Bova's statements. I think that I'm not against regionalization, but unfortunately, there's not enough data to make any type of definitive decision. And for me, at this point, it's going to be a no for me.
All in favor of the resolution or the action resolution? Yeah, to send the question to the General Assembly, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion,
to adjourn.
Second.
there's a motion second to adjourn. Discussion, hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.